If you have a small garage workshop like I do, justifying the size that a wood lathe takes up is pretty difficult. I want to show you something that may just convince you if you're sitting on the fence that you should have a wood lathe. Wood lathes can be used for all sorts of stuff. Some of them pretty useful, and some of them not so useful. You can make everything from bowls to spools to even a perfect sphere on the wood lathe if you know how. But most of the time that I'm using my lathe, I use it for something much more pragmatic. By taking one of the mounting brackets that you usually use for lathe work and mounting a wooden disc to it that has sandpaper on it, you can convert it into a sanding disc, and it is the most useful thing that I have in here. I just use spray adhesive to attach sandpaper to the disc, or sometimes I get the self-adhesive sandpaper, but it's a little more expensive. This just mounts right on the lathe like normal. Then I install this plate that a friend of mine welded for me. Fits right into where the normal rest goes. And now I have the perfect space-saving place for a disc sander. If you're anything like me, you don't weld, so I'll show you a pretty easy alternative. This old piece of pine is pretty flat, so it'll make a nice base. I guess you'll have to skip this step if you don't yet have a disc sander. Now I cut a piece of flat coil stock big enough to cover the piece. I'm just going to spray adhesive both surfaces and then stick it together. Patience is key with spray adhesive. Give it enough time to dry. And I sprayed both surfaces, and you only get one chance to put it down. It's sticking over on all sides, but I'll trim it up with a knife. I'm just going to use a piece of 1/2 inch black iron, and this is a floor mounting bracket. You can get them at Home Depot real cheap. It's just a couple bucks. You'll have to rotate this piece here until the square shows no gap along the disc. Once it reads nice and square, you can mark your holes and screw the plate to the base. Pan heads. Those are always a pain to find. I snapped a piece of PVC onto the pipe to act as a stopper. This will set the height. We want the height to be halfway up the disc, but just a little bit lower than half. And there it is, finished disc sander. There is another alternative that you could use to make one of these. If you don't have this for whatever reason, or it's not possible or practical to do what I did, you could just develop some kind of simple table. It would still do the same job. For convenience, I keep lots of different discs with different grits of sandpaper on them. This disc has sandpaper on both sides. It can be really useful for certain applications. I'll show you one. Because this disc has sandpaper on both sides of the disc, I can use it to do some pretty intricate parts. This side of the gear wouldn't be possible to sand on this side of the disc sander. A wood lathe has a lot of ways to attach your workpiece other than just a faceplate like this. This is a pretty common way. I don't know what it's called, but most lathe attachments work with this sort of taper system. And as you drive it in, it gets tight. The same taper system works on the tailstock, which has this little pivot. This can be used to balance delicate pieces. Another taper thing is this chuck. By adding a chuck, then you can use it for a drum sander and a whole bunch of other things. I hope I convinced you that a lathe can really open up a lot of options for you in your wood shop. Good luck.